Before we get started, I'll let you in on a secret. All your favorite personal development coaches, the ones you follow on YouTube, TikTok, Instagram, have one thing in common. Without exception, they've all drawn from this book. All those revolutionary strategies, those tips that seem brilliant and powerful, they come from here. And as the chapters go by, you'll realize I was right. Because James Clear's Atomic Habits isn't just a book about habits. It's the ultimate guide to how tiny changes can produce extraordinary results. And it's no coincidence that over 20 million people have already adopted it. With 140,000 ratings on Audible and 122,172 perfect scores, it's the essential bestseller on the subject. Why listen to this summary all the way through? Because each chapter will bring you a revelation. We'll talk about identity, discipline, motivation, self-control, and above all, concrete strategies to transform your life, starting today. You can listen to this summary while you're working out, or in your car, or doing the dishes, or tidying your room, or even sitting comfortably on your sofa. Wherever you are, it's what you get out of it that counts. Ready to get started? Let's get started. Part 1. On the last day of my sophomore year of high school, my life changed in a split second. A baseball bat hit me in the face, knocking me out cold. The impact devastated my skull, crushing my eye sockets and sending me into a struggle for survival. I regained consciousness briefly, blood testifying to the severity of my wounds. But that was only the beginning. My body collapsed under the effects of the convulsions, and I had to be intubated urgently before being evacuated by helicopter to a better-equipped hospital. Plunged into an induced coma, I was on the verge of the worst. My parents, already stricken 10 years earlier by my sister's leukemia, were facing a new ordeal. The night was long and agonizing, but the next day brought hope. I was able to breathe without assistance, thus beginning my return to life. But recovery was hard. My body was bruised, my face deformed, my vision doubled. It took months of rehabilitation to regain a semblance of normality. My dream of playing baseball was dashed. Demoted to a junior team, I felt humiliated and powerless, but I refused to give in. 2 years after the accident, a new beginning awaited me at Denison University, away from the hustle and bustle of high school. I discovered the power of small habits. Instead of focusing on radical changes, I opted for gradual improvements: regular sleep, a tidy bedroom, discipline at work. Slowly but surely, I rebuilt my life. It wasn't long before the results began to show. My health improved, my body strengthened, and my confidence grew. Through perseverance, I rose through the ranks of the varsity baseball team, eventually becoming captain and earning prestigious academic honors. My journey wasn't spectacular, but it was proof that gradual change, based on solid habits, could transform a life. This realization inspired me to share my experience. In 2012, I began writing articles about habits and their impact. My regularity paid off. Within a few years, my newsletter attracted hundreds of thousands of subscribers. This adventure led me to create Habits Academy, a training platform on habits, and to collaborate with prestigious organizations. This book is the fruit of those years of research and experimentation. It does not promise instant success, but a gradual transformation. Because if we adopt the right habits, then anything becomes possible. Translated with deepl.com, free version. Chapter 1. The Impact of Small Habits, the example of British cycling. In this chapter, the author discusses a fundamental concept: how small, gradual improvements can lead to spectacular results. To illustrate this idea, he uses the example of British cycling, the governing body of professional cycling in Great Britain, which has undergone a spectacular transformation thanks to a very precise strategy. The story begins in 2003, a year when British cycling was far from being a world reference. Since 1908, British riders had won just one gold medal at the Olympic Games, and none had ever won the Tour de France. The team was so bad that one bicycle manufacturer even refused to sell them equipment, fearing it would damage his brand image. It was against this backdrop that Dave Brailsford was recruited as performance director. His objective? Transform the team into a group of champions. But instead of seeking radical change, he applies a revolutionary method, the accumulation of marginal gains. The idea is simple. Instead of looking for an instant upheaval, Brailsford decides to improve each element of British cycling by just 1%. Individually, these small changes seem insignificant, but accumulated day after day, they eventually produce a massive effect. He starts with classic adjustments, such as improving saddle design or rubbing tires with alcohol for better grip. Then he takes this logic a step further by optimizing details that are often overlooked. Use of lighter, more aerodynamic suits, studying the best massage gels to accelerate muscle recovery, teaching optimal hand-washing techniques to prevent illness, choice of personalized mattresses and pillows for better quality sleep, white paint on the inside of the team's trucks to identify dust that could impair mechanical performance. These micro-improvements, applied rigorously and consistently, will create an impressive dynamic. The cumulative effects of marginal gains are staggering. In 2008, just 5 years after Brailsford's arrival, the British team took 60% of the gold medals in cycling at the Beijing Olympics. In 2012, at the London Olympics, it broke 9 Olympic and 7 world records. That same year, Bradley Wiggins became the first Briton to win the Tour de France. He was followed by Chris Froome, who won the event in 2013, then 3 times between 2015 and 2017. In 10 years, the British team accumulates 178 World Championships, 66 Olympic and Paralympic gold medals, and 5 Tour de France victories. A spectacular turnaround for a team once relegated to oblivion. Why do little habits change everything? The author wants us to understand that we often overestimate the impact of big moments and underestimate the power of small habits. We think that success is based on an exceptional event, when in reality, it's the result of a series of daily micro-decisions. Let's take a simple mathematical example. If you improve by 1% every day for a year, you'll be 37 times better off at the end. Conversely, if you regress 1% every day, you'll end up close to 0. It's exactly like compound interest in finance. The more good habits you accumulate, the more they generate exponential results over the long term. The problem is, most people give up before they see results. Why is that? Because progress is often invisible at first. The author illustrates this phenomenon with an analogy. Imagine an ice cube placed on a table in a cold room. The temperature drops from -3 degrees Celsius to -2 degrees Celsius, then to -1 degree Celsius. But nothing happens. Then, suddenly, at 0 degrees Celsius, the ice cube begins to melt. It wasn't that last degree that started it all, but all the heat accumulated beforehand. This is what he calls the plateau of latent potential. You can exert yourself for weeks without seeing any change, but those exertions aren't lost. They accumulate beneath the surface until they trigger a sudden breakthrough. The domino effect of habits. Habits are powerful because they work like a domino effect. Each habit influences the next. A better diet equals more energy, more motivation to exercise. Better time management equals less stress and better concentration. Conversely, bad habits also work the same way. Late night Netflix equals less sleep, less energy, and less productivity. The author therefore insists on the importance of carefully choosing our daily habits as they shape our future far more than one-off decisions. Focus on the trajectory, not the immediate result. The mistake many people make is to obsess over their current situation instead of looking at the direction they're heading in. Are you overweight? What matters is not your weight today, but whether you've adopted habits that will lead to better health. Are your finances fragile? It's no big deal if you start saving gradually. What matters is that you're on the right track. In short, success is not a sprint, but a marathon of progressive improvements. The important thing is not to see immediate results, but to be certain that each daily action brings you closer to your goal. Let's take a moment to consider the deeper implications of this approach. By focusing our attention on means rather than ends, we transform the way we perceive progress and success. Far from the obsessive quest for an end result, we immerse ourselves in a system of continuous improvement, a fluid process that knows no end or limits. The power of small, repeated actions. Great transformations don't come from radical decisions taken on a given day, but from an accumulation of small daily actions. It's by practicing an instrument every day, even for a few minutes, that you become a virtuoso. It's by writing regularly that you refine your style and end up writing a book. It's by adopting a balanced diet on a daily basis that you improve your health in the long term. Each habit acts as a lever, creating a cumulative effect far more powerful than the one-off motivation implied by isolated objectives. When we put everything on one goal, we neglect this fundamental process. We put ourselves under enormous pressure and place ourselves in an all-or-nothing posture. Either we succeed and feel a fleeting sense of relief, or we fail and sink into frustration. On the other hand, when we focus on the means, we free ourselves from this mental burden. We learn to appreciate every advance, no matter how small, and engage in a dynamic that carries us far beyond our initial expectations. Adopt an identity in line with your means. One of the most powerful consequences of this approach is the change in identity it induces. When you base your progress on a goal, you measure your success solely in terms of your ability to achieve that particular goal. But when you focus on the means, you shape your identity according to the actions you repeat. For example, instead of saying to yourself, "I want to run a marathon," say to yourself instead, "I'm a person who runs every day." Instead of setting yourself the goal of writing a book, adopt instead the identity of a writer, a person who writes regularly without waiting for an imminent deadline or publishing contract. This nuance is crucial. Goals are temporary, while means shape who we are in the long term. Consistency, the key to success. In this approach, consistency takes precedence over intensity. Too often we think of success as the result of Herculean efforts, extreme discipline, or sudden inspiration. In reality, it's the small, regular actions that build the most enduring successes. It's not an intense workout that makes an athlete, but the disciplined repetition of those workouts day after day. Let's take the example of an investor. If he tries to get rich by betting everything on a single stock, he's taking a huge risk. But if he adopts a regular investment strategy, betting small sums on solid stocks, he benefits from the cumulative effect and increases his wealth over the long term. The same is true of our habits. Each small action we repeat brings us closer to an exponential result. Process as reward. When we focus on the means, we begin to see the reward differently. Rather than focusing on future gratification, we learn to appreciate each step along the way. We find pleasure in the act of learning, in the progression itself, and not just in reaching an ultimate goal. This has a profoundly liberating effect. We stop waiting for a future event to make us feel fulfilled. We cultivate our satisfaction in the present moment, in every workout, every page written, every effort made. Far from being a constraint, the process becomes a source of fulfillment and joy. Building solid resources. If we really want to make progress, we need to build means that serve us in the long term. This means creating systems and environments that naturally encourage our habits. If you want to read more, make it easier to access books by keeping them close at hand and setting aside a dedicated time each day. If you want to eat more healthily, stock your fridge with nutritious foods and avoid unnecessary temptations. If you want to exercise regularly, plan your sessions and surround yourself with like-minded people. By optimizing your environment and setting up clear routines, you eliminate the constant need for motivation. Good habits become automatic and a natural part of your daily routine. The power of the long term. Finally, adopting a means-based approach means understanding that real improvement is not based on one-off performances, but on continuous evolution. It's not the sprint that makes the difference, but endurance over time. Every day, every repeated action shapes us a little more. At the end of the day, true success is not about reaching a specific goal, but about becoming the person who embodies that progress. And only a commitment to means can make that possible. So, instead of asking yourself what goals you need to achieve, ask yourself this question: what means can you put in place today to progress, even by a small step? Because it's these steps, accumulated day after day, that will take you further than you ever imagined. Conclusion: why this philosophy can change your life. This chapter teaches us a key lesson. Great success comes from small, repeated improvements. Whether you want to become rich, healthy, an expert in a field, or a top performer in a sport, the secret lies in habits. Don't look for radical change, but for small daily adjustments. Don't be discouraged if you don't see immediate results. Progress is often invisible until a tipping point is reached. Focus on the direction you're moving in rather than your current situation. If British cycling was able to rise from mediocrity to the top of world cycling by applying this method, imagine what you could achieve by adopting the same approach in your life. Chapter 2: How your habits shape your identity and vice versa. Why is it difficult to change habits? In this chapter, the author aims to show us why our efforts to adopt good habits often fail, while bad ones seem to settle in effortlessly. We've all tried to exercise regularly, eat better, or read more often, but these resolutions don't always stick. Why is this? The author explains that it's down to two common mistakes. 1. We try to change the wrong thing. 2. We're using the wrong approach to change our habits. Here, we'll focus on the first point. What kind of change really works? The 3 levels of change. In this chapter, the author will talk about the 3 levels of transformation when it comes to changing behavior. 1. Change in results: losing weight, writing a book, winning a competition. 2nd, process change: adopting a sports routine, improving productivity. 3rd, identity change: becoming a disciplined person, an author, an athlete. A common mistake is to focus solely on results. Many people set themselves a goal, such as running a marathon, without adopting the corresponding identity, that of a runner. Yet for change to be sustainable, it must start with identity. The importance of identity in changing habits. In this chapter, the author wants to show us that our identity plays a key role in our behavior. Let's take the example of 2 people trying to quit smoking. When offered a cigarette, the first says, "No thanks, I'm trying to quit." The second says, "No thanks, I don't smoke." The difference is subtle but powerful. The first still sees herself as a smoker in transition, while the second has already adopted the identity of a non-smoker. What we believe about ourselves influences our actions. If you see yourself as a disciplined person, following a routine becomes natural. Conversely, if you think you're rubbish at maths, you'll unconsciously avoid any situation involving calculations. The effect of beliefs on our behavior The author talks about the impact of our beliefs on our actions. If you believe that, "I'm not athletic," you'll find it hard to motivate yourself to go running. "I'm bad at languages," you'll quickly give up learning a new language. But these beliefs are not immutable truths. They are constructed and can evolve. How do you change your identity? The author wants to show us that our identity is shaped by our repeated actions. To transform it, here are 2 essential steps. 1. Define who you want to become: an assiduous reader, a disciplined entrepreneur, a healthy person. 2. Accumulate evidence through concrete actions. Every action is a vote for your new identity. For example, reading a page a day turns you into a reader. Running 10 minutes a day makes you a runner. Writing a paragraph a day makes you a writer. The snowball effect of habits. In this section, the author explains how each small, repeated action reinforces our identity. Over time, we come to fully embody this new version of ourselves. Take the example of Brian Clark, an entrepreneur who had been biting his nails since childhood. One day, he decided to stop and get a manicure. When it was pointed out to him that he had beautiful nails, he started taking care of them. By changing his behavior, he changed his identity. He became someone who takes care of his hands. The dangers of a fixed identity. The author also warns against the trap of a rigid identity. Saying, "I'm no good at maths," or "I'm not athletic," can lock you into unnecessary limitations. Your identity needs to remain flexible and evolving. Conclusion. In this chapter, the author wants us to understand that real change starts with identity, not goals. Key points to remember. 1. Changing habits begins with changing identity. 2. Focus on who you want to become rather than what you want to achieve. 3. Every action is a vote for your new identity. 4. Accumulate evidence through consistent habits. 5. Don't lock yourself into a rigid identity. In the next chapter, we'll look at how we can apply these principles in our daily lives to bring about lasting change in our habits. Chapter 3. How to build better habits in 4 steps. In this 3rd chapter, James Clear explains how habits work and how we can change them to achieve our goals. The key idea: all habits follow a 4-step process. If you understand this process, you can take control of your behaviors and create habits that last. This chapter is a true masterclass in the mechanics of habits and how to use them to your advantage. 1. What is a habit and why is it so powerful? A habit is an automatic behavior that we repeat regularly, often without even thinking about it. Why do we have habits? Habits are a shortcut for our brain. They allow it to save energy by automating repetitive actions. Example: when you learn to drive, every action requires concentration. But after a few months you drive without thinking about it. Your brain has turned this into a habit to save energy. 2. The 4-step process of every habit. James Clear reveals that all habits, good or bad, follow an identical 4-step cycle. 1. The cue or spark. This is the signal that triggers the habit. Example: you smell coffee, trigger, you crave it. 2. The craving or attraction. This is the anticipation of the pleasure the habit will bring you. Example: when a smoker sees a cigarette, they imagine the pleasure of nicotine. 3. The response or action. This is the behavior itself. Example: you drink coffee, you smoke a cigarette, you exercise. 4. The reward or pleasure. This is the immediate benefit that reinforces the habit. Example: after drinking coffee, you feel awake and alert. We only repeat a habit if it brings us a reward. Examples of habits and their process. Let's see how these 4 steps work with concrete examples. Example 1, a positive habit, going to the gym. Trigger: you see your workout clothes on the bed. Craving: you imagine the feeling of well-being after the workout. Response: you put on your sneakers and go exercise. Reward: You feel satisfaction and a rush of endorphins. Result: your brain associates exercise with a pleasant sensation, which reinforces the habit. Example 2. A negative habit. Eating too much sugar. Trigger: you see cookies on the table. Craving: you anticipate the sweet taste and instant gratification. Response: you eat a cookie. Reward: you feel a dopamine hit, immediate pleasure. Result: your brain associates sugar with a quick reward, which encourages you to repeat the action. The faster a habit is rewarded, the harder it is to break. Why are some habits so hard to change? James Clear explains why bad habits are so hard to break. They offer an immediate reward, but negative long-term consequences. Good habits are more difficult because they require immediate effort, but offer long-term benefits. Example: diet and exercise. Bad habit: fast food. Instant gratification, but long-term weight gain. Good habit: exercise. Immediate effort, but a healthy body in the long term. The solution: make good habits easier and bad habits harder. More on that later. How to create good habits. Easily. The 4 laws of change. James Clear offers 4 simple laws for creating good habits. Law 1. Make the habit obvious. Play the trigger. Place your workout clothes in a prominent place. Leave a book on your nightstand to read more. Set an alarm to drink water regularly. Law 2. Make the habit attractive. Play the desire. Associate your habit with something enjoyable, e.g., listening to music while running. Create a support group, e.g., exercising with a friend. Associate an action you enjoy with a habit you want to adopt. Law 3. Make the habit easy, simplify the action. Reduce the difficulty. Start with 2 minutes of exercise instead of 30 minutes. Use the 2-minute rule. Take the first step, the rest will follow naturally. Remove friction. Prepare your things the night before. Use an app to track your progress. Law 4. Make the habit satisfying. Increase the reward. Track your progress on a calendar. Check off each day you complete your habit. Reward yourself after an action, e.g., a delicious smoothie after exercise. Use a points or challenge system, e.g., save €5 with each workout. Small victories add up and strengthen motivation. How to eliminate a bad habit? Reverse the 4 laws. Law 1. Make the habit invisible, hide the candy, uninstall the distracting app. Law 2. Make the habit unappealing. Associate it with a negative consequence, e.g., paying a friend €10 if you smoke. Law 3. Make the habit difficult. Add friction, e.g., put your phone in another room. Law 4. Make the habit unsatisfying. Find an accountability partner who monitors your progress. Conclusion: take control of your habits. Habits always follow a 4-step cycle. Good habits require immediate effort but pay off in the long run. Use the 4 laws to create habits that last. Reverse these laws to eliminate bad habits. Control your habits and you control your life. Chapter 4. The first law of behavior change. Make the habit obvious. In this 4th chapter, James Clear introduces us to the first law of behavior change. If you want to adopt a new habit, you must make it obvious. Why? Because our brains operate on automatic mode and follow what they notice most easily. By changing our environment and highlighting the triggers for our good habits, we make it easier to adopt new behaviors. This chapter is a true masterclass in the science of habits and how to use visual and environmental cues to take control of our actions. 1. The story of the doctor who saved a life. Thanks to an invisible intuition, Gary Klein, psychologist and decision-making expert, tells the story of a woman who once attended a family reunion. A former paramedic, she had a keen eye for the subtle signs of medical distress. As soon as she arrived, her gaze fell on her father-in-law, and an inner alarm went off. "You don't look well to me," she said worriedly. The man, deep in conversation and feeling fine, replied jokingly, "Well, you don't look well either." But she persisted. Something was wrong. The emergency was there, invisible to everyone, but blatant to her. She convinced him to go to the hospital immediately. A few hours later, he was on the operating table, a major artery blocked, an imminent heart attack narrowly averted. Without her intuition, he might not have survived. What had happened? What had she seen? Her keen eye, trained over the years, had perceived an imperceptible clue. A subtle change in skin color, the result of blood flow diverted to vital organs due to arterial obstruction. She couldn't explain exactly what she'd noticed, but she knew. Her brain had learned to read these signals without her even being aware of it. This phenomenon isn't limited to paramedics. Experts of all kinds, without always being able to explain it, develop an almost instinctive ability to identify hidden signals. A military analyst can distinguish an enemy missile from an Allied aircraft on a radar screen at a glance. A museum curator can immediately spot a forgery among authentic works. A radiologist can see on a brain scan the area where a stroke is about to occur, even before it's obvious. A hairdresser can sometimes sense a pregnancy simply by touching the hair. The human brain is a gigantic database, continually storing and analyzing the patterns around us. Through repetition, it sorts, selects, and identifies relevant triggers, automating signal recognition. This works in all fields, from art to medicine, from war to commerce. This is how our habits are formed. Through experience, we unconsciously pick up on triggers and respond to them without thinking. We underestimate how automated our actions are. You don't think about your hair growth, your heartbeat, or your digestion. Your body handles it all on autopilot. Take hunger, for example. How do you know you're hungry? It's not because you see a cake on the table. Your body sends hormonal signals that gradually trigger the desire to eat. An unconscious mechanism is triggered without you being aware of it. The same goes for our habits. A store employee accustomed to cutting out empty gift cards ends up automatically cutting out a customer's still valid bank card. A former teacher who moved to the private sector unconsciously asks her colleagues if they washed their hands after using the restroom. A former first aid worker sometimes shouts without thinking, "Stop running," when he sees a child rushing past. Our habits are so ingrained that we no longer notice them. They are triggered automatically, guided by imperceptible signals. This is what makes them useful and dangerous, from the invisible to the visible. If we want to change a habit, we must first make it visible, because as long as a behavior remains unconscious, it is impossible to change it. Carl Jung said, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will rule your life and you will call it destiny." How do we do this? By becoming aware of our automatic responses, one by one. The Japanese railway system offers an excellent example. On Tokyo trains, conductors follow a strict ritual. They point to each signal and read out their observations aloud. Upon arriving at a light, they point to the indicator and announce, "The light is green." At each station entrance and exit, they announce their speed. On the platforms, attendants point to the tracks and declare, "The track is clear." This method, called pointing and calling, reduces errors by 85% and reduces accidents by 30%. Why? Because it forces you to become aware of what you're doing. It transforms an unconscious habit into a conscious action. The habit dashboard. We can apply this method to our own lives by creating a habit dashboard. The idea is simple. 1. List all your daily habits. For example, wake up, turn off alarm, check phone, use toilet, weigh in, shower, brush teeth. Morning coffee. 2. Next to each habit, note whether it is positive plus, negative minus, or neutral equals. For example, wake up, wash, turn off alarm, pash, check phone, shower, plus brush teeth, plus coffee, plus 3. Evaluate your habits based on your goals. An action is not inherently good or bad. It all depends on what you want to achieve. Eating a croissant in the morning might be a bad habit for someone trying to lose weight, but a good one for someone trying to build muscle. 4. Ask yourself this question: is this behavior helping me become the person I want to be? Once your dashboard is in place, there's no need to act immediately. Simply observe your behaviors without judging them. Notice what you're doing as if you were observing another individual. Awareness precedes change. If you want to go further, apply the pointing and calling method to your own life. When you're about to take an automatic action, verbalize it. I'm going to eat this cake, but I don't need it. It's going to make me gain weight. I'm scrolling on my phone when I should be working. By announcing your actions, you make them conscious. And once conscious, they become changeable. The transformation process always begins with awareness. Making the invisible visible means regaining control. And regaining control means giving yourself the opportunity for change. How to apply this in your life? 1. Say your actions out loud to break your automatic habits. I'm going to check my phone now, but is it really necessary? I'm going to have this cookie, but is it good for my health? 2. Make your good habits. Obvious visual cues are your best allies. Concrete examples: if you want to read more, place a book on your pillow. If you want to exercise, put your sneakers by the door. If you want to drink more water, keep a bottle clearly visible on your desk. Good habits should be visible and easy to trigger. How to eliminate bad habits? Reverse the method. If a habit is triggered by an object, hide that object. If you want to stop snacking, don't leave snacks visible. If you want to stop scrolling on your phone, put it away. If you want to watch less TV, hide the remote. What you don't see doesn't appeal to you. Conclusion: the power of visual cues. Our habits are triggered by what is visible around us. The first step toward change is to make good habits obvious. Use the habit dashboard to analyze your daily life. Adopt the point and announce method to become more aware of your actions. Make your bad habits invisible by hiding their triggers. Master your environmental cues, and you'll master your habits.